The year is 1908. Ford would introduce the Model T, sporting an all-new flathead engine design, but make no mistake, it's generally misconcepted that the Model T engine was Ford's first engine. In this episode, we will cover the Model T engine as well as the Model A and Model B engines, all of which are four-cylinder engines. And it's important to note, this is an engine history overview. With that said, we're not getting into the year-to-year changes because there was quite a bit of changes that happened to all of these engines in their lifetime. Bore and stroke sizes may be rounded. Also, this episode doesn't get into part interchangeability. To understand how huge the Model T was as an innovation, look at what the cars looked like in the early days. Most had total loss oiling systems with single or twin cylinders in the peasant cars. Not to say that they were cheap. In the luxury brands, they had compound cylinders, but casting was the issue. In the early days, it was common to see each cylinder cast as its own separate casting, or it was cast in pairs or even triplets. Many may not know this, but Ford actually built a 6-cylinder the same year they introduced a 4-cylinder. It was found in the Model K. That model was produced from 1906 to 1907, and it was Ford's first car failure because of high cost. It didn't sell as well as expected. Also, that same year, 1906, Ford released the Model N, which was their first 4-cylinder model. In 1908, Ford announced the Model T, which was, I should say, would become, because in 1908, even the Model T was just a bit out of reach for the everyman. The Model T put people on roads. It transformed this country. The Model T engine was revolutionary because it was a monoblock design, meaning the block casting housed the pistons as one unit. It was a simple but effective design. Lubrication was splash. It didn't have an oil pump. The crank would splash the three main bearings, cam, and lifters from oil in the oil pan. The Model T engine didn't have a water pump. The system is not pressurized, but it does have a radiator. Just to be clear, it's not air-cooled, but it uses a process called thermosiphon. Model Ts didn't use a fuel pump either. The fuel was delivered by gravity feed. L-head configuration, meaning the valves are next to the pistons, pointing upward. Used cast iron pistons, reverse cylinder head. It's worth mentioning all of these engines have detachable cylinder heads. With a displacement of 177 cubic inch displacement, flat head or L-head 4 2.9 liters. It's good for 20 horsepower at 1600 RPM, 83 pound-feet or 113 newton meters at 900 RPM with a bore of 3.75 inches and a stroke of 4 inches. Compression could be anywhere from 4.5 to 1. Compression was lowered in 1912 to 3.98 to 1, and the reason was so it could run off of multiple fuels. The Model T could run off of gasoline, kerosene, grain alcohol, or just known as pure ethanol. Three main bearings, years 1908 to 1927 in cars, and it's important to note that this is the only engine that Ford offered between those years. So it was offered in everything, the trucks, the heavy-duty trucks, the cars, but they also continued production for stationary engines until 1941. It's also important to note that Ford's Model T engine started the aftermarket / speed parts being made because these cars were affordable, and you know, some people just wanted a little bit more power, baby. Rajo, high compression heads, and Ruxtol 2-speed rear ends making the cars go faster. Ford would build more than 15 million Model Ts. The Model T successor came in 1927, and it was vastly improved with a totally different block design with double the power. The car would be called the Model A, and the very first one was built in secrecy at Ford's Rouge plant, completed in October of 1927. That engine was installed in a 1928 four-door sedan given to Thomas Edison. Henry Ford and Thomas Edison were really good friends. Ford would unveil the Model A automobile on December 2nd, 1927, just in time for Christmas. The Model A engine also implemented a monoblock engine design built from cast iron, both the block and cylinder head, just like the Model T. Both cylinder bore and piston stroke grew, making displacement 200.5 cubic inch displacement or 3.3 liters. Has three main bearings, which are Babbitt type. So when they go bad, they need to be poured. Three main bearings are lubricated by gravity feed. Everything else is splash lubricated, 5 quarts of oil capacity. The Model A engine is water cooled as well. It also has a water pump, whereas the Model T did not have a water pump from the factory but could be added aftermarket. Model A was also gravity feed fuel delivery. Model A also has an oil pump. 200.5 cubic inch displacement inline flathead 4 3.3 liters. It's good for 40 horsepower, 2200 rpm, 128 pound-feet or 174 newton meters at around 1000 rpm, bore of 3.876 inches and a stroke of 4.125 inches. Compression was 4.22 to 1. This engine weighs about 350 pounds. Years this engine was used, 1927 through 1931, and would be used in all Ford cars and trucks, as well as stationary engines to power generators, compressors, water pumps, airplanes even. In 1932, Ford unveiled their all-new flathead V8, which was the first time any manufacturer offered a V8 at an affordable price point. But make no mistake, Ford wasn't the first company to make the V8, just the first affordable V8. Mass-produced with detachable heads, monoblock design, which was revolutionary for the auto industry. Also in 32, Ford would introduce the Model B, which was intended to be the base model. Ford updated the 4-cylinder Model A engine, now calling it the Model B engine. The engine looks the same on the outside, but the difference was inside. Power increased 10 horsepower thanks to an all-new profile cam that increased duration timing. The displacement stayed the same, 200.5 cubic inch displacement. It also received larger diameter bearings for both connecting rods and main bearings for added durability and a little bit more power, baby. The journal size also grew. But the piece de resistance was the main bearings were now pressurized in the Model B, which isn't the case in the Model A engines. Rods were still splash lubricated, only the three main bearings got mild pressure lubrication. The Model B engine doesn't have an oil return line from the valve galley at the bottom of the crankcase on the passenger side. Model B engine also used a mechanical fuel pump that is driven by the camshaft. This is where things get a little bit confusing. Some people will call the 1933 to 1934 engine the Model C engine, which is an unofficial name for that engine. And the reason why people call the 1933 to 1934 engine the Model C engine is because Ford updated the crankshaft with counterweights and was made of forged steel, whereas the 1932, a lot of them did not have counterweights on the crankshaft. And to add to the confusion, Ford offered all kinds of different heads, even for different markets. There was two main heads for the US market, A-6050B, which was the high compression head, bringing compression up to 522 to 1 versus 422 to 1. It was called the police head. It has a B on the top of the head. Just know that these heads are prone to cracking. They also offered the B-6050. It's marked C at the top and was the standard head from 1932 to 1934 with a 4.6 to 1 compression ratio. There are many other different heads for other markets. I will link in the description if you want to see all of the different heads that were offered. 200.5 cubic inch displacement, flathead 4, 3.3 liters. It's good for 50 horsepower at 2800 RPM, 128 pound-feet or 178 newton meters, around 1000 RPM with a bore of 3.876 inches and a stroke of 4.125 inches. Compression varies. Years 1932 to 1934. 1932 has conflicting information. Most sources say that it does not have counterbalanced crank. 1933 through 1934 has a forged steel crankshaft that is counterbalanced. Ford would drop the Model B for the 1935 model year and went all in on the flathead V8 design and wouldn't technically get replaced until the release of the 136 flathead V8 design in 1937, which is covered in this video. All right, now it's time for Would You Rather. Two scenarios today. In the first scenario, heavy duty mashup. Would you rather have a 1927 Ford Model TT or 1930 Ford Model AA or 1933 Ford Model BB? I'm going to leave this here for a minute. If you need more time, feel free, pause the video. Now it's time for the second scenario, and they're a bit all over the place. Ford Model T Sea Cab or Ford Model A Town Car or Ford Model B convertible sedan. I'm going to leave this here for a minute. If you need more time, feel free, pause the video. Now it's time for Name That Tune. First person to get both the name of the band and the song title correctly in the comment section will have their comment pinned to the top of it. Thank you all so much for coming out and watching this. If you'd like to get in touch with me, shoot me a comment in the comment section below, or check out our Facebook group that correlates with this YouTube channel. If you don't have Facebook and would like to reach me, send me an email. All of that will be linked in the description below. Just know I appreciate everything that you guys bring in the comment section. I totally dig reading the stories and the insight and information that you each bring. And until next time, toodaloo!